With Kirby and the Forgotten Land being finally released and everyone experiencing it for a good while, one key question many people are asking themselves is if the Forgotten Land will receive additional updates or even paid DLC. The reason for this question is Star Allies, which was expanded with more free content after its release, so players are wondering if something similar might be planned again. After all, the Forgotten Land celebrates a great success among the globe, therefore making the idea of DLC, be it paid or not so incontestable. This is what we're going to find out today, so let's evaluate the possibility of an expansion for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. First, you have to be aware that updates are nothing unfamiliar for the franchise. The already mentioned Star Allies is a good example, but many people like to forget about Battle Royale and its additional copy abilities. Of course, it isn't much, and we never got paid DLC for a Kirby game. Nonetheless, you have to be aware that there's always a first time for everything. When Breath of the Wild released back in 2017, no one would expected this game to have actual DLC, because it felt so unnatural for the series. The very same could happen in this case, building on established ideas and expanding them with even better variations. However, there's one key element that Breath of the Wild as well as the Forgotten Land share. Both feel like a complete package. The only reason why Star Allies got these substantial updates is the game being released unfinished. I'm not going into detail about the whole finish it later approach Nintendo likes to apply, especially to their sports games, but it's undeniable that Star Allies felt rather empty at its initial release and was finally completed 1 year later. All of this happened due to Star Allies being developed in only 2 years after Planet Robobot for the 3DS, despite being the first HD title for a new home console and needing much more work. There was no way this game would have the same amount of substance as many other home console games without taking a cut, and because Nintendo seemingly wanted to have a main release in the first half of 2018, they decided to bring Star Allies out and complete it later. Of course, it was exciting to see which Dream Friends were added, and you can clearly see the passion behind the game, but the Forgotten Land is noticeably different. This may be pure speculation, but perhaps the developers felt the same, and precisely because being the first proper 3D title in the series, they took their time to ensure a finished experience at release. The result speaks for itself. There's nothing significant missing, everything you come to expect in the Kirby game is included, and the playtime reflects the genre standards accurately. Obviously, you can always wish for more, but I think everyone can agree that the Forgotten Land feels like a true and finished game without compromises. The natural question that follows is if they should build on that foundation and keep the fans engaged or immediately start on the next one. Of course, one reason to bring out DLC is to make the most use of what we already have. Especially the treasure roads offer themselves greatly for more missions, since they are probably fairly easy to create. Other than that, the other two promising elements are copy abilities and the mouthful mode. Even though the developers implemented upgrades to established skills, some players still feel a little underwhelmed by the small selection of abilities, which could easily be expanded by at least 2. The mouthful mode, however, is different, since the special trait of the game relies heavily on the level design and cannot simply be enlarged without altering the worlds. They would have to build a whole new world to make it feel satisfying. Naturally, this would be the best case scenario, but it would also mean paid DLC, since creating such an expansion would not come without its cost. And this is where I would draw the line. Creating a new world means occupying the team for at least 2 months, manpower that could go into the next project. The only true and believable reason for developing such a substantial DLC is the Switch 2, or whatever they would like to call it. Imagine they start with the next mainline title now, which would likely take longer than a 2D platformer, then we have to assume they would at least need 3 years of development time. By the time this game would be finished, the Switch is probably going to be already replaced or slowly but surely closing its tomb. As a consequence, it makes absolute sense to start this next game already for the next console, but in order to still feed the Switch with some Kirby, they could bring out actual DLC. To put it in short terms, the developers could split the team. One team works on the DLC, supporting the Forgotten Land for another year and establishing the series direction into 3D more rigorously. Meanwhile, the other team could experiment with the next big thing and wait for the Switch 2 to release a Kirby game at launch. However, there's still one final option, which is proved by a very suspicious character in the Forgotten Land: Meta Knight. Fans notice quickly how out of place Meta Knight appears to be in this game. He's basically only there to fight him in the Colosseum and plays no significant role in the narrative. Of course, it is stated that he protects the Waddle Dee village from the Beast Pack, but isn't this kinda odd? Why would they implement him in the first place if there's absolutely no reason to? After all, Meta Knight does nothing in Triple Deluxe and DDD does not appear in Amazing Mirror at all, so it's no problem to leave out a character if he is not relevant for the game's premise. Well, seemingly. If you collect and read more trophy descriptions, you find out about Meta Knight's background and how he was sucked in by the portal as well. Instead of becoming mind-controlled like DDD, Meta Knight could actually resist this enormous power and kept his sanity in order to find a way back to Dreamland. It's even stated how he reached the end of Frozen Horn even before Kirby, only to come back and fight off beasts for the good of the Waddle Dee town. And if you think this wasn't enough, Gorimondo, boss of the First World, tried on more than one occasion to destroy this peaceful place again, but was defeated by Meta Knight more than 30 times in a row. It's very clear how much of an impact Meta Knight had on the story in the shadows, and even though it kinda fits his stigma of being a knight, not looking for appreciation but justice instead, it still feels weird how elaborated his journey is. So what if we get a whole new Meta Knight bonus story where we can play as the lonely knight and experience the story from his perspective? They could even implement Gorimondo as the main villain for this campaign, similar to Mario plus Rabbids Donkey Kong DLC, where the first boss, being a gorilla by chance as well, was reintroduced as the main threat. Imagine having to defend the Waddle Dee town from hordes of different beasts, while you hear the mighty cry of Gorimondo in the background. This idea has just too much potential to ignore and would be the only way for me to justify splitting the development team. It would feel like a complete expansion since you even control a completely different character, and would even add to the overall story in a logical way. This is the only scenario where I actually see proper DLC being done. Of course, there is still the option to update the game with smaller, free stuff, especially in consideration of the 30th anniversary. Going by how Nintendo likes to spread their releases, you can easily assume the Forgotten Land was already finished at the end of 2021, so there was plenty of time left to prepare smaller gifts. What I think of is something similar like in Metroid Dread, for example, an extra proper hard mode or modes in general, just like in Star Allies. Either way, I'm certain there will be something, and we only have to wait and see how big this something is going to be. But what do you think about all of this? Do you wish for proper DLC, or would smaller updates be already more than enough? Is it a good idea to occupy the team with the Forgotten Land, or should they use their knowledge and manpower to create an even better next game? Even though I'm kinda critical towards a proper DLC, I know I would still be excited. Especially after describing this whole Meta Knight thing. After all, this guy just won a Grammy, so maybe this would be a great opportunity to celebrate his success. Never thought this would be a sentence to say out loud.